it looks like. Anyway, you just open by greeting me, and then I'll put up some slides and tell you some of the decision points. I think we have a full hour, but nothing more.
Okay. So greetings, Heiner. Happy to have you here again, and we'd like to hear from you while you are at COP28. What is it that you would like to report, and what is it that you would say to our audience and people who are going to be watching this video, that this is the emerging thought process, these are the emerging conversations at COP28? And also, how is it that you've been able to present your own experience and the interpretation that you bring to us?
Yes, thank you, Arti. I will show my slides so that we can see a little bit where I am. So you see, I'm here in a very strange place. This was a place in Bonn where we had the German Chancellery, but it's now all behind gates. So the Chancellor moved to Berlin, and all the very special places where we opened our Global Change exhibition exactly 33 years ago is behind bars. It's under reconstruction. And I'm at the COP28 preparatory talks. Here on the lower left is the assembly place, and there are the negotiations of the willing countries. There are willing and unwilling pupils or children or elders, and it's also about the states. So we have to look who is on the table, who would like to lead or follow or do something, or just others make it happen. So what I did, I moved out of this building here with the UN, 300 meters, and looked behind the bars, because what we did 30 years ago was looking into challenges to science and politics. And after this celebration 3 years ago, we called it Challenges to Humanity and You. You is not just the parties, but the people, the pupils, everybody. And so what I'm doing here is trying to explain a little bit, how did I come to this? What made me join this Global Change exhibition effort? And this is this slide where I presented with Manfred Lange this exhibition 3 years ago. And we highlight it so prominently because it was a major effort of research projects, but also the research on climate and well-being and lifestyles and behavior and diets. So it was a very comprehensive effort, and half was burned because research problems are not new anymore. But the main issues of the presentation of Manfred Lange, the areas on the man and the environment and the climate and what is system Earth, all these posters are still available. And what I presented was that it was not Manfred Lange and me, but a real polyhister, a real gentleman, a real philanthropy and theater and whatever guy doing the ballet studio in Bonn. It's a dance archive, but also being the PR and communications guy of universities and of the national research centers. So we do it in memory of Eberhard Gockel. And I really showed that it was a major effort. You see here below, Mr. Gockel is low in the end, and above him, Mr. Lange. And I was the only personal contributors All the others were industry or research centers or universities. And to give you a rough idea what we are talking here about, everybody is thinking now about UNCED. UNCED is in the middle. That was 1992. But the whole time, with the International Space Year, all through 1992 was an effort of all research on remote sensing and mapping in the early days of internet. And my timeline shows what I did in this critical phase in my life from 1990 to 95, working with the Alfred Wegener Foundation on the upper left, which is a general geoscientific research organization having all earth sciences, cultural sciences, soil, astronomy, meteorology, all these people there. And my work was with United Nations in an OECD G7 effort for data harmonization, because we have the data in different compartments and different silos nowadays. Today, we speak about silos, but to bring it all together in multilingual, this was the special opportunity for me to bring to this German or Europe centers people some knowledge from international organizations, because I had been working in UNDP projects, United Nations Development Projects, in the 70s, and then in the 80s, early 90s, in UNEP, United Nations Environmental Programs. So what you're seeing here, it's a timeline through exhibitions, through market fairs, through industry fairs like the Geotechnica we did with Alfred Wegener Foundation, and ending up 95, where the first COP was. And this was a lot the topic here today. What happened the last 28 or 27 COPs? 28th COP is to come in November, December. So just telling you this very focus of what I'm in. I'm not going to go into these details of harmonization and how science bodies, journals, knowledge organization, Club of Rome, all these bodies were looking into how to prepare Rio. So for this, on the lower left, this intersectorial strategic dilemmas was a matrix done with the United Nations University and in Tokyo, and the UIA, Union of International Associations in Brussels, to really look into the intersectorial strategic dilemma. Because when you give something, then every mother knows the others children will take something. So it's a give and take and sharing and caring and losing and winning. And this issue of looking at it comprehensively is my topic. And with this UN harmonization project, we very much looked, and that's why I'll be showing it in a while, we looked into the flying magnifying glass in the center, where we looked into evacuation planning in the Alps and steep landscape evolution and how to map it, and how to bring it in different languages and into different repositories. So this is all history. I'm just going through this timeline. This was with Klaus Töpfer, the later head of United Nations Environmental Program, which I invited and toured then through the Alfred Wegener Foundation hall and the Geotechnica challenges to science and politics, research and coordination tasks of international organizations, which are called local and global change, because at that time we already spoke about global, but nobody knew the word global in 1991. And so my background to really being involved is I worked since the early 80s in data visualization. So I'm not a numbers guy and I'm not a letters guy. I was in computer visualization, worked with IBM in the Executive Briefing Center on scientific visualization and show shades of color. And that was not possible before. When you look at the weather maps and television nowadays, you can even see flows and tensions. But at that time, humans had grayscales, like on the lower left, where you can see with gray shades how chemical situations are distributed in a map. But to really show how things evolve in 2D, in 3D, in color, was my field of working. This is here Financial Times, 87, direct line to hidden places, or International Herald Tribune, it was on computer graphics, on innovative imaging, giving extra dimensions. And there we showed in this article how the Titanic was found. It was found through this visualization. And I was a sales director or marketing guy to really look into visualization in all means. And I'm not going into detail, but to really show you, I was really alien and exotic, speaking about color, when most of these people couldn't imagine that we will have digital photography. So now we are at the end of the timeline. This was then the first COP, was 95. And there I made one hall for the exhibition and the other hall of the research and coordination tasks of international organizations. So all these players have been there, and there we looked into trees. So looking into trees and having them in an harmonic approach, bringing it together from the meadows through the birds to the earth, was already a cooperation with all these forestry and youth organizations in 95. So only tell you I'm struggling. This were the proofs that I've been there and that I've been organizing it and who was in which hall. And then I really toured this exhibition, 20 years environmental agencies in the different regions in the Länder in Germany, and giving the history. Or just to give two examples, so you see yellow were this research and projects of German research or European research agencies. And on the left was how to act responsibly. And there we, for example, had a poster where all these posters could be good, and I have still, as a curator, them still under my command, could be kept and shown today. But maybe the image of the president of Germany, von Weizsäcker, on the bicycle would need to be changed, and such changes had been done. But what I'm showing is a solar house. We presented a zero energy solar house with a heat pump, with insulation, with all technologies already in 1990. And so we have to discuss today what has been happening the last 33 years, where they were always fighting only, is it such a such house, or is it positive or negative or fully insulated or whatever, and not going into integrated solutions. So this is the synopsis. And at the last part, I really want to show what really changed my approach and how that kept me looking into the issues, because I had studied geoscientists, and the main task of this first exhibition was System Earth. What is a System Earth? And we couldn't agree. And you see here on the right side is a Rubik's Cube of ecology. I was building last minute as I was desperate, as we couldn't explain what is System Earth. So when you look at all the blue posters, you see, we had to make a picture of what is the system Earth, which time scales, which spatial scales, which temporal scales. And by trying to map it in just in a matrix, even when you show the research and coordination task connected to it, was not enough. And so out of my desperation that the magnitudes were not involved, micro, meso, macro scales, remember the cube, what we later called glocal, or certain sectors were not involved, or different times, that when we, for example, did this poster here in the center with the grids of the sectors and the spatial scales, then paleogeologists and astronomers came up and said, we forgot the time. So what we did, we really looked comprehensively, what are the elements, what are the feedback loops, how can we map that? And I'm a map and model maker, and really see what the issues are. And this is actually what I'm seeing here in these conferences. They go more and more into details and struggle more and more, but very often are not sure about the direction or what to take with them on their knapsack. So some people just speak about CO2 and not some other minerals like methane. And they don't speak about short-term, mid-term, or long-term, or rapid, or episodal, or long-term. So there's a lot of confusion. What is the system? Is it linear? Or can we, as I was building into this black box, white box, Rubik's Cube of ecology, something like a space for extra orientation, not orientation in the detail, but in the overview. And for that, I was building a model, what you now could be calling a pointer to possibilities, an extra orientation help for virtual and augmented realities to really show issues and shades and overlaps and connections, and not just numbers and labels. So anyway, this has been a long journey of painting, doing workshops, discussing the issues, discussing mindsets and paradigms. And on the lower left, with the Council of Europe, new ideas in science and arts, new spaces in culture and society. How can we describe what we are doing? Is it enough to have a paradigm? Is it my paradigm or your paradigm? So we spoke about paradigm mapping or meta paradigms and reflecting on the mindsets and the boundaries and thresholds in our thinking. So all this goes on and on and on. We did workshops with that, discussing what is a problem space, what is the solution space, what is the mindset, what is the workspace of a mind. You see, these are all courses to reflect on your mind's eye and your position from the me or the you or the they position, or like the children say, the worm's eye, fish eye, bird's eye, group's eye, generational eye, but being able to negotiate, and as many wisdom cultures tell us, take our own viewpoints out, because you cannot solve an issue or a problem when you're stuck in your sweet isolation. So I'm still struggling with For Futures on bringing all these different mindsets and interest groups and filter bubbles together and look into encounters and conversations and really see that you cannot just do science or just education or transforming politics, but really engaging in social welfare or sometimes even going into active protest. All is needed and need to be discussed to come in group situations to the root causes, to the deep drivers. So you see, I've been playing with what is our model, what is our mindset? Do we have a metaphor for that? Is it a sweet pie, like the Brothers Grimm in fairy tales? Or are we in a final flood, or a prison, or a show, or a variete? Anyway, there is much, much more, but what I wanted to tell you, I was deeply concerned that we don't have the right words, and we fight more and more over details, and do forget that there is a right to have overview and orientation, and not just not knowing anything and just fighting and coming to overclaims and oversimplification, but to have a right, like when you live on an island or in a valley, to have an idea what is where, what is a big picture, and then negotiate it, not as a panacea, but a way to really come to common sense and community building. And this continues with the civil society, with ECOSOC in the Global Commons Alliance, discussing what are the root causes, where to address our energies. Do we do it in SDG 4 or SDG 11? Or do we go into the deep root cause mapping, into the blind spots, into the negotiations, into the diplomatic peacemaking? So, Arti, this was, I think, already 15 minutes or even 20, but I wanted to give you a broader picture on my timeline and how I came and what I'm doing now in filmmaking, in education, in communication. And that's why I'm still attending such gatherings, preparing for the next climate summit, because it's needed to discuss what are the issues and what are we leaving out and for which benefits. So I'd better stop the slides now. And you have heard so much from you already. Maybe you come with some questions, or we stop and do it another time.
So this is wonderful work, Heiner. First of all, I thank you on behalf of everybody who's ever been, is, and is about to come for the work that you've done since COP1 and even before, because this truly shows your passion and your understanding of things at a much deeper level and from multiple perspectives. You did mention something that we do not have the right kind of words, and that becomes such a challenge. That is such a huge roadblock, because you, being a person who's been into data visualization, who's played with colors to really showcase what the differentiators are in a situation or even across timelines. I think that is where it comes from, the whole idea of mapping, the whole idea of structuring, of making these models. One thing that I would like to hear from you on is my personal belief that every situation requires modeling for anybody to navigate through it. And each of those models have a shelf life. They are not forever. But the fear, I did use the word. It is the fear of abandoning those models and recognizing or identifying or discovering newer models that are applicable. And most of the times at the highest level or even at the lowest level, when it comes to decision making, it is the fear of really giving that model up and go in search of a new one, because that is precisely the whole walk of evolution. And that is something which has to be understood so deeply inside of a person to say that this is the language we need, so that more people understand, and the more we converge on the right kind of decision making that is aligned with the time. Tomorrow we might have to make different decisions as well. So that openness comes with imagination. And I think visualization is a big part of that imagination. And if you have data, then you've really made a point. Right. So how do you feel about this? Is this something which one can say is a right assessment of decision makers, or on behalf of decision makers, that they are normally stopped by fear?
First, I need to take a breath and take a water. And I have to confront that my original setting, now the sun coming down and is shining in front of me, is okay when I showed some slides. But now when we have our portrait and see each other, it is better that I'm relocating and have a better light condition. So you're going to a very central point. But to address it and to answer your concern and your question, we have to first confront what is a map? What is a model? Do we mean a mathematical model? Do we mean a flat map or a deep map or a color map in 3D? So
it could vary. It could vary in situations. Let's consider theoretical frameworking.
Yes. So in common language, we have to be very much aware that maps and plans can be very helpful, can be pragmatic, and they can be wrong. So we have to make a new one. So we have to discuss it. And this is like Kotzebue, the map is not the territory. Also, the map is not the territory. It is a help construction to help us make a shared imagination, a shared model, a shared concept, and see how to improve it, how to adapt it to new goals or new situations in a different culture. So the moment we reflect with youth that there are not eternal truths when I make a map or I make a plan or I make a model, but it's something to help us come to commons, to common realities, to common actions, then this way to present them in shades, in colors, in multidimensional, in dynamics, with tensors like pressures or so, that is really the need, because the solution spaces have to be as highly dimensional as the problem spaces. Because when we try to solve as flat earthers, deep earth problems, we are not getting anywhere. So anyway, this is central issue going into demagogy when we try to convince or create news or realities like fake realities to really deceive and manipulate people. So it's visual demagogy, we said, but also the age of infographics, that we can use other means and broader spectra of solutions to address the problematic.
Absolutely. And I think most of the time, even decision makers lack the ability to articulate, because there are so many directions that have to be brought together. It's almost like, you know, all your stems are spread out, and how do you hold them together? So it is the need of the hour for this level of mapping. And I think we are so fortunate to have the kind of technology we have today at our disposal to be able to create these frameworks, these maps, which, because we do not have examples for everything to follow. And therefore, it is extremely important that we identify a point of departure, at least, to begin with. And then as we move along, we discover what needs changing in the framework, in the process, in the structure. But I think it is a question of willingness. It is a question of passion. It is the question of how fearful we are of changing from our stance, and how, you know, indestructible we consider ourselves. And I think that is where historically also, all the decisions that have ever been made not in favor of mankind land in truth. The intent. So, well, we wish each other a lot of good luck for the work that you're doing, Heiner. And I'm very fortunate that I'll be working with you on some of these things. So thank you so much for all the work that you've been doing. It is the foundation of what can be done next.
Okay, so let's do it next time. Tonight I have to go back to Berlin, but it was really a nice ending of my 2 days here in Bonn, seeing old and new people. And here we have a lot of more young people, and I think they need direction. So we need intergenerational approaches and really bring what is possible for the next climate negotiation and make them aware it is not just CO2. It all begins with us. So anyway, it was great to have this short encounter. I have to do some packing now, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. You too. Take care, and talk to you once you're back home.
Bye-bye.
You can stop the recording. Bye-bye.